25-30, 35-40, 45-50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious. Yep. How about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. The preview bus has stopped in Big 12 country, and we have called this the Battle for Fury Road now for a couple of seasons. And Trey, it feels like that storyline, that narrative is about to continue to perpetuate itself through 2025, where maybe the Big Ten and the SEC have more championship contenders, more teams throughout the conference that could legitimately make a run in a national championship. But there's no doubt that as far as entertainment value goes, and a conference that operates on the thinnest of margins where truly anybody could beat somebody else on a week-to-week basis, the Big 12 is king there.
Absolutely. And if you follow college football at all, you know that that's been the big storyline for the last couple of years, especially in the post-Texas and Oklahoma world. We just have no idea who is going to be on top year in and year out. I mean, my biggest storyline this year is who are we missing? We think we know who's going to be at the top. We have a team in Texas Tech that's bought a fantastic portal class and looks to be on the rise. We have a team in Baylor that is a lot of fun. But then we have a team in Arizona State who are projecting to just be right back where they were. If you remember this time last year, us and everybody else picked them dead last in the conference, and they ended up winning the whole dang thing and going to the college football playoff, giving Texas all they could handle in the Peach Bowl. So that's what I'm most looking forward to, man, is we're going to talk about some teams on this episode who the Jimmies and Joes, which, man, like, great job. Honestly, like, I don't agree with the rankings that you came up with, but you could probably justify these after the top three in almost any order you want. So great job. That we're talking about the teams today that the Jimmies and Joes ranked 16 through 11 in their power rankings. And literally any of them, you could probably find one or two things and say, hey, like, if they just fix this or go on a hot streak here or win some close games, they're right in the thick of it in November. And that's what makes this conference great. It's what makes it my favorite to follow in all of college football, because it reminds me of the old days where it felt like just regular seasons mattered and things were just so much more fun and open.
The Big 12 to me is a big if-then function, where I feel like half of these teams, maybe more than half of these teams, if they get this to go right, then sure, like, you could talk me into being a threat to contend for Arlington. And I think that's what's so much fun about the Big 12. It was a blast writing the previews. It's going to be an absolute joy to break them down here over the next week through these three podcast episodes, whether you're listening or watching on YouTube. And you mentioned the Jimmies and Joes certainly came up with an interesting ranking of these teams. We're going to be talking about those, and certainly I think moving some teams up our personal rankings, moving some teams down our personal rankings. But all of that to say, another huge thank you to the Jimmies and the Joes, you guys, the listeners, for all the support. We are halfway through the Big Four conference previews. It's been a blast, and you guys have been right there in the thick of it with us, filling out the surveys, commenting, interacting with the episodes, and then as I put out on our social media, writing really fantastic messages to us, reviews. It's cool to see that you guys recognize how much effort and energy and research that we put into this. And you know what, Trey, like, we're going to get stuff wrong. We've gotten stuff wrong in the past. And we know that we're a national show. We truly try and cover all 136 teams because we know that there are fans that listen to our show and could conceivably be, a Kennesaw State fan or a Missouri State fan or a Delaware State fan. And so, or a Delaware fan, sorry. I mean, you could be a Delaware State fan, but you could be rooting for the Blue Hens. You get what I mean. But because of that national coverage, we don't know your team like you do on the message boards every single day. And so if we do get something wrong, definitely let us know. Write in 3techpod@gmail.com. You can comment it. Obviously, we'd ask that you be nice about it. But we'd love to obviously get things right, whether it's a pronunciation guide or, a player moving up the depth chart, etc. So just
Please
felt
help
like
with the pronunciation guide. That would be absolutely amazing, actually.
Dude, when you talk about, we've written literally thousands of words. I mean, we're probably getting to close to 100,000 words all said for this preview season. And yeah, I mean, every once in a while a name is going to escape us. So anyway, just chime in. Let us know when we get that wrong. If you are bullish on the Big 12 and you feel like playing around with some of those players, maybe with the games, you can do so with our presenting sponsor for this episode, all of our episodes this year at Underdog Fantasy. Our partners at Underdog Fantasy are giving the Jimmies and Joes the chance to get off the sidelines and into the game with up to $1,000 in bonus funds plus a free pick when you sign up and use the code 3TechPod, all one word. Build your lineup by simply picking higher or lower on your favorite projections and win. It really is that simple. New players can get up to $1,000 in matching bonus funds and unlock a free pick by using our code 3TechPod. So join us on Underdog Fantasy today, and let's get the party rolling. Underdog Fantasy promotes responsible gaming, must be 18 plus or 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, and 21 and over in Arizona and Massachusetts, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Or in New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Whew. Excited to play Underdog Fantasy with you guys all season long. We've been talking about the games you can get going on over there. Obviously, the free pick come the college football season is going to be massive, but maybe you want to use it on MLB right now. A lot going on over at Underdog Fantasy, so thank you to them for partnering with us. Trey, you talked about your top storyline being who are we going to miss? Who's the team that is going to surprise us? I think we're going to get into maybe two teams on this list and the first 6 teams that we're going to cover tonight that I think might answer that bell. My personal storyline, I think, is the quarterback play for this conference. I am fascinated by the signal callers and the gunslingers in the Big 12 because even at the bottom of the conference, we're going to talk about UCF in just a second to kick things off. Even a guy like Tavon Jackson or Cam Fancher gets me excited because in this conference, offense does a whole lot, but the defense has obviously taken a large step forward conference-wide, and so you have to have a guy that can fit it into those tight windows, that can lead you down the field in a 2-minute drill type situation, and it really feels like through the majority of this conference, you've got quarterbacks that can do that or are on the verge of being labeled as consistent and able to do that. For me, that just gives us, nonstop entertainment week in, week out. And again, it lends itself to why I think this conference operates on the thinnest of margins.
Yeah, and you said it right there at the end, the thinnest of margins. There's going to be close games week in and week out. You're going to be playing so many of your conference games are going to be decided by 3 points, 7 points, 10 points. So the mistakes matter too, and taking care of the football matters. So having some experience, having time in these offensive schemes, having the maturity to dunk it down or to not take a sack or just throw it away, that's huge. And the little things really do add up in this league when the margins are so small.
They sure do. Man, I can't wait to figure out who we did miss when we look back at the end of the year and all of a sudden Central Florida has gone 9-3 and we're just, dumbfounded. I think this is probably a good transition into the breakdowns. Central Florida is top of mind here. They come in at number 16 in the Jimmy's and Joe's power ranking. I'll kick it to you to start. When you look at Scott Frost coming back to UCF, what's kind of your initial thought and temperature check there?
Well, yeah, he's one of 2 guys. We'll talk about Rich Rod at West Virginia later that are coming back to a former school. Just a really interesting storyline there in and of itself. This is a team I really loved the Gus Malzahn hire when they made it. I thought that was a fantastic hire for a school like Central Florida. I thought that he would get the most out of that school, and that's when I really got wrong. He ended up resigning last year and saving the school quite a bit of money by doing that. So shout out to Gus. But yeah, this is Scott Frost. Obviously, the shine has worn off quite a bit because of his tenure going back home to Nebraska. But you forget, if you just focus on the Nebraska tenure, that he took over at 0-13 UCF team, got him to bowl eligibility in year 1, 6-7, and then went undefeated, 13-0 in year 2. So literally from winless to undefeated in a span of 2 years. That's just absolutely unheard of. And it feels like a guy, I said this about Gus Malzahn, but it feels like a guy that could really unlock some potential at this program. I don't know if they'll do it this year, but as I was doing my notes, I basically came to the conclusion that, there's a lot of unknowns, but I think the most known players are at the 3 most important positions. I think they have a good quarterback in Taven Jackson. I love their left tackle, a 6'10 German kid named Paul Rubelt. And I really like the pass rush. I think the pass rush could be a really interesting weapon this year. So as you dove a little deeper into your research, I'm sure you found some flaws, but I like the 3 most important positions, arguably.
No, I think you're right. I think UCF being down here at the bottom, I think is a product of, one, Scott Frost feeling like a true retread that maybe nobody was asking for. It kind of feels like the sequel to a good movie, but a movie that felt like it was final and, a one-off. And hey, man, I can enjoy that, 5-10 years down the line, but then they start making sequels and it's like, oh, we need...
So Scott Frost is Glass Onions, the sequel to Knives Out?
Oh, yeah, that was...
Really need?
We really didn't need it. And listen, Scott Frost, if he could find a way to bottle up that magic that he channeled in the late 2010s, right? The 2017 run was nothing short of remarkable. But what I'm concerned about at the highest level is Frost, it felt like, lost touch and fell behind with what modern college football ultimately ended up being. He goes to a bigger program in Nebraska where he has all the resources and all the advantages that maybe he didn't necessarily have at UCF. And he absolutely fell apart. They went 16-31 in his short tenure in Lincoln. And then he kind of lit everything else on fire again by saying, don't leave for the wrong job, when asked at Big 12 Media Days, like, oh, what happened at Nebraska and what lessons did you learn? To me, it started off his second tenure at UCF on just kind of the weirdest of notes, where I didn't necessarily think that it was all his fault at Nebraska. I mean, there were a lot of things that it felt like the athletic department wasn't necessarily doing right, and that was not a team that was built to win a Big Ten championship game. But man, to throw the administration and the school, your alma mater, where you are a legend, under the bus in one fell swoop was an interesting start. He hires Alex Grinch as his defensive coordinator, which is an immediate no from me, dog. One of the worst defensive coordinators statistically in college football over the last, I don't know, decade. He's been ruining defenses at Oklahoma and then USC, and then finally got fired. And to be honest, I don't know what he went and did in between USC and UCF, but here he is. He's popped up again. We're going to play this version of Whack-A-Mole. So the coaching hires give me concern. I cannot say that I'm bullish on them. Now, the roster, to your point, has a boatload of new faces, and I don't know how the puzzle pieces will fit together. But in a vacuum, there's a lot of talent on this team. The roster last year, I felt like, was talented, and they were one of the best offenses as far as running the football. I believe they're 4th in the country, 5th in the country, almost 250 yards a game. They were a top 15 total offense, but when it came to actually getting the ball across the goal line and into the end zone, they were one of the least efficient teams in the country. They had a turnover margin of -8. It was just this weird Gus Malzahn enigma where they could put up all the numbers and then wouldn't necessarily punch it in, pay it off. So UCF has to find their identity on offense, and I know they're going to need to run the football. You mentioned Taven Jackson, Cam Fancher as well. They've got to pick a starting quarterback. And then the offense just simply has to hang on to the ball. They bring in Jaden Nixon as their lead running back. He came over from Western Michigan, where he was very productive in Kalamazoo. The offensive line has some really nice pieces. And, the wide receivers may be a little bit thin, but they bring in transfers from Florida and Charlotte and D2 Limestone. So I don't know. It's an intriguing it's an intriguing group. I think, though, when I look at the defense and just not knowing what to expect with Alex Grinch leading that group. I mean, we saw the talent that he had at Oklahoma and at USC, and I can't buy in. I'm sorry, Knights fans. I cannot buy in to start this year. Their over-under is at 5.5, which to me feels a little bit high, and it feels like the Jimmies and Joes kind of agreed with that assessment. So, nothing personally against the Knights. Like I said, there's some pieces here that I really like, but until I can see it work and it not just kind of be a Days of Our Lives episode, respectfully, I'm going to be out on UCF in 2025.
Well, if you're looking for optimism, UCF fans, the team that was voted 16th in this poll last year won the conference. So congratulations on the 2025 Big 12 championship to the UCF Knights. But
that's right.
In all seriousness, Alex Grinch having an Alex Grinch defense means you're going to have to win in shootouts. That's just a fact of life at this point. We've seen it at 3 different schools. It is how you're going to have to win games because of just, frankly, his inability to put out a competent defense. I don't know how the man still has a job. He obviously knows way more about football than you and I ever will, but as we've seen time and time again, he just has not been able to put a competent defense on the field. The 5.5 over under is really interesting. That's a really common number to the Big 12. I think it's a safe number for Vegas to just kind of throw it out there and say, hey, will they make a bowl or will they not? The schedule's not terrible. You look up and down. They have a tricky opener against Jacksonville State. That's a Gamecocks team that is rebuilding in and of it themselves, switching offensive schemes. They host North Carolina. I have no idea what the Tar Heels are going to be this year, and anyone that tells you that they do know is lying to you. So the non-conference could be difficult, or it could be a thing that we point out and say, hey, they won 3 games and really built some momentum going into conference play. They do go to Manhattan. They go to Baylor. They go to Tech. So that's really difficult. 3 of the top teams projected in the conference, all on the road. If they're going to make a bowl, I think they have to sweep West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Houston. But they get all 3 of those games at home. So
sure,
it could be worse, I guess. But certainly drawing those top 3 teams on the road is no cupcake.
Yeah, and I think to your point, getting those swing games at home is certainly an advantage. We know the bounce house can be an intimidating place to play. By that point, though, in the season, if it's all fallen off the tracks and if Scott Frost continues to talk bad things into a microphone and Alex Grinch hasn't been relieved of his duties, I don't know if the students are showing up that late in the season, but we'll see. I look forward to hopefully UCF getting to rebuild that brand. It was so much fun seeing seasons go to die in the bounce house and just kind of being able to set your watch to that. It's next year that they change the name to Acrisure Bounce House. Isn't that right?
I think it might be this year, actually.
Is it this year?
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know that name change is coming really soon.
Yeah. Well,
I love that they kept the bounce house in the name. Like the company that bought the rights is at least doing that. So we're not fully selling out to corporate sponsorships there.
Sure. That's always a plus when we maintain some semblance of integrity of the game.
When I think about the most storied places in college football and what we need to protect tradition-wise, I think the name of the bounce house is probably top 5 in the list. Hey, let's go to apparently the new rival of UCF. I don't know if you've seen this news that they are going to make this the space-themed game most years when they play and potentially be a permanent rival in the Big 12. It's the Houston Cougars, 4-8 and 3-6 in the league last year in Willie Fritz's first season down there in Houston. They got maybe the biggest transfer pickup in the entire conference when you think about an individual player and the ceiling that he has in quarterback Connor Wegman. Obviously didn't hit that ceiling consistency, wasn't on the field enough to really live up to his 5-star billing at Texas A&M, but he'll have one more chance to do that. They also picked up Dean Connors from Rice. I think that's a really interesting running back pickup. Mm-hmm. The defense was honestly the strength of the team last year. Not something that we come to expect from Houston, but they kept them in a lot of ball games. They played a lot of close games. They picked off TCU last year in a really surprising game that kind of set the Horned Frogs scrambling in the early part of that season. But as you look at year 2, Willie Fritz has often made a pretty big jump at previous stops in year 2. And I think this might be a team that you could buy low on and have a really big payoff.
Yeah, this is the team that when we have fans ask, who is your Arizona State or who's your Indiana this year, I don't think that there's going to be one team necessarily that pulls off an 11-1 like Indiana did last year, or a run to the Big 12 title like Arizona State did, worst to first. But Houston might be as close to projecting that as you can get, because they were dreadful on offense last year, 132nd in the country in scoring. They averaged 14 points a game. They had no quarterback. The running game was not good enough to push them over the hump, barely 90th in the country, and then the passing game just had nothing going for it. And so Willie Fritz did hit the portal this year, and he hit it hard, brought in a lot of Texas kids back to H-Town. He brought a lot of Louisiana kids down to Southeast Texas as well. And that's where Fritz has made his name, right? Like, that's where he has so many ties over the course of his illustrious coaching career. And it's what really helped him with Tulane. He was able to bring hometown kids back to New Orleans if they left, or keep them at home to start the proceedings. So I think he's going to be able to do the same with Houston. You mentioned what he went out and did in the portal. Connor Wegman, he brought in a number of new wide receiver and tight end options. Harvey Broussard comes over from Louisiana. Tanner Koziel transferred from Ball State to Wisconsin and then hit the portal again, and now is playing at Houston. That is going to be a massive weapon for Connor Wegman and this offense. You mentioned Dean Connors, really good running back at Rice. I'm excited to see how high he can fly behind an offensive line that's been reloaded. Another big addition to the portal. They went out and they got a new left guard, a new right guard, and a right tackle from Oklahoma State, California, and Texas Tech. And then you add their top 2 leading receivers from last year, and Stephon Johnson and Mekhi Muse are also both back. So to say that the offense is primed for, I think, a massive jump would be an understatement. And then you flip it over to the defense, and they pulled off a coup, getting Austin Armstrong to leave Florida to come to Houston. I think it speaks volumes of what Willie Fritz is building as far as a culture and a selling point for this Houston program. And, they did lose A.J. Halsey, who bolted for the portal, stud safety, who's now an LSU Tiger. But the guys that they brought in the secondary to try and to fill that void, Rook Brown from Wyoming, they brought in Blake Thompson from Louisiana Tech, Kentrell Webb and Latrell McCutcheon Jr. are both back, safety and cornerback respectively there. And then off the edge, Brandon Mack II is the big name to know. I was chuckling to myself earlier. I am now in Houston in my College Football 26 Dynasty file, and Brandon Mack transferred from Houston to Rice, kind of pulled the reverse Dean Connors. Didn't understand that at all, but the point is, the kid is a verified talent. Had 3 sacks from the jack position at linebacker last year. I look forward to seeing how Armstrong kind of turns him loose off the edge this season. And, they get Jesus Machado and Corey Platt Jr., 2 presumed starters at linebacker last year, but lost during the season due to injury, or lost most of the season due to injury. They're both back and healthy. So I think that as good of a job at reloading in the secondary as could have been done has been done by this coaching staff. And then I really like the front 7. So the roster is certainly trending in the right direction for me, and I really like what Houston is putting together.
Yeah, you mentioned Austin Armstrong. They also bring in Slade Nagel, who was Willie Fritz's offensive coordinator at Tulane for those better years that he had there. So all signs are pointing up on that side of the ball after being so bad last year. Do you think Connor Wegman has it in him, though? Like, is he going to be able to, maybe the pressure's off a little bit because he's at Houston and not Texas A&M. Maybe it's an offense that better fits his skill set than what Colin Klein was trying to run in College Station. Do you think he has it in him that he can really lead a team and get himself back in the conversation for the NFL draft next year?
It's a great question. I mean, gosh, we've seen the flashes. We've seen Connor be able to get the ball out quickly and on time, and then hit you over the top as well, especially when the running game is going strong. So I do think it's in there. I wonder what it's going to take to unlock that again. For whatever reason, we have seen quarterbacks leave College Station and go on to have productive careers elsewhere. And so, I mean, at the very least, Wegman's got that going for him. I do like the offensive line that's been rebuilt in front of him. And quite frankly, Wegman's a guy that needs the timing and that synergy between he and the wide receivers, and it just never felt like he had that at any point last season. Back to 23, when there was a little bit more speed in that wide receiver room, it felt like he had developed some of that. And, for just whatever reason, he lost that. It was very clear early on he was seeing ghosts, especially against Notre Dame. And then, he has the breakthrough against Missouri, and it's, oh my gosh, here's the Heisman Connor Wegman we've been waiting for. And then LSU had him in proverbial knots again. So, long-winded way to say I don't know. I really hope so, because boy, this Houston offense is going to be a blast to watch if Weggy's feeling it.
Yeah, I hope so for the kid too. He just seems by all accounts to be a really good kid who stayed at A&M through a coaching change, really has worked through so many injuries, so many setbacks in his career. For somebody so talented, that's so difficult. And I really want to see him end his career on a high note. Transitioning over to the schedule, I think there's a big opportunity in front of them to start the season. It's SFA at Rice, and then back-to-back games that I think if you win them, there's going to start to be a lot of buzz around this Houston program, and it might even get you in the top 25 before you host Texas Tech to kick off October. They host Colorado on September 12th. They have a bye week, and then they go to Corvallis to take on Oregon State, who there's a lot up in the air about that Beaver program right now, but still carries a name cachet that if they can win that game on the road, it's going to carry waves throughout the rest of the schedule. I think they could start 4-0, Mitch. I'm not all in on Colorado this year. They're going through a lot of turnover. They get that game at home on a Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big, big opportunity. If they can start 4-0, there's going to start to be a lot of belief in that locker room.
I'm with you. They've got to make their hay early if they're going to make a bowl game. The over-under is set at 5.5. That has actually come down from 6.5. It started, I believe, at 4.5 when the season ended. And we got those way too early projections. They started dominating the portal. It shot up to 6.5, and then now I believe the underbettors have it. Is confirmed on your graphic. They've moved that line back to 5.5. So the question again is whether or not Houston can get to a bowl game. I think they can. This is a team that personally I have them much higher. I don't know about much higher, but closer to the top 10 than 15th. I do not believe this is the second worst team in the conference. I think, questions about Colorado certainly abound. Questions about Oregon State abound. I think Rice is going to be a fun watch this year, a quirky watch with Scott Abel running that shotgun triple option. But Houston should be 4-0, in my opinion, going into that game against Texas Tech. After that, though, the schedule is kind of gross. They have Tech road trips to Oklahoma State, Arizona State, UCF, and Baylor throughout the course of the season. They'll host Arizona, West Virginia, and TCU. So they've got to make that hay early, right? You're probably going to lose to teams like Texas Tech and Arizona State and TCU and Baylor, probably, even though I know you beat TCU last year. But the question is, if you can start 4-0, then I think we're approaching that, hey, why not 7-8 wins for this Cougar team? If you do lose to Colorado and or Oregon State, then it's clinch time. Then you're starting to wonder, okay, where are these wins coming from? And, the hard part about projecting the Big 12 this year is we're going to talk like Oklahoma State next. Who the heck knows what Oklahoma State is going to look like, right? I mean, that was a historically bad Cowboys team under Mike Gundy. They might be right back there in the cellar. They might kind of progress back to the mean and get some sense of normalcy. And so when it comes to projecting games like that on the schedule, West Virginia is the same deal. It's like there's kind of too many variables to know what's going to happen for sure as we sit here in July. So very much a watch this space. I think if you're so inclined to go put hard-earned American currency on this on your wagering platform of choice, just know that you are assuming all the things by betting the over or the under on a bet like this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to at least split those two I highlighted earlier at the top, right? Colorado and at Oregon State, got to find a way to at least split. You'd love to go 2-0 in those two games. If you do split, you're at 3-1, presumably. You've got a home game against Arizona, a home game against West Virginia, who's probably in a similar tier as you. And then you've either got to knock off TCU at home or find a way to win a road game to get to that 6 wins. So I certainly think it's possible. I think they got the talent to do it. I think that this program is one that I want to buy stock in right now while it's still a little bit low, because I think Willie Fritz is a great coach, and Houston has always been a program that is surrounded by talent and can get guys in to win. If they can start just winning a few recruiting battles and get some NIL moving that like they have on their basketball team, it's going to be something where we see this program really take off. So buy stock now. It might hit this year, it might hit in the next couple of years, but I think it will certainly hit at some point. Mitch, you teased it earlier. Let's go up to Stillwater, Oklahoma. The Cowboys started 3-0 last year, and then they went 0-9 to close out the year. 0-9 in Big 12 play. I mean, no one had this on their bingo card. They had an 18-year bowl streak. They were one of the most experienced teams in all of college football. I think Phil Steele had them as the most experienced team in all of college football. They had a Heisman candidate in Ollie Gordon, and it just all fell apart, man. Like, once the losses started piling up, it got really toxic really fast. There were rumors of what Mike Gundy's future was going to look like. He was somewhat holding them hostage over a contract situation. It just became, you said Days of Our Lives earlier. It became Days of Our Lives and All My Children having a toxic child together really, really quickly in Stillwater. And now all of that's gone because this is a completely new team. You have dozens of transfers coming in on both sides of the ball. You have 2 new coordinators, Doug Meacham, the offensive coordinator, Todd Grantham, the defensive coordinator, a big name, but one that might not be a big name for the right reasons. Tell me about Oklahoma State. Like, my third bullet point is shrug emoji, because you said it best in the Houston preview. This could be a team that Mike Gundy just fires up and finds a way to conjure up some magic, and they're right in the thick of things in October and November. Or we could be looking at a coaching change at the end of the season.
You could talk me into 8-4 for this Oklahoma State team. You could talk me into 2-10. I mean, it is that wide. It's a Grand Canyon when it comes to the range of possible outcomes. You mentioned dozens of transfers. That's putting it mildly. They have 65 new faces on the roster as of recording, which is an ungodly amount of new guys. I made a joke to you the other day regarding playing on the college football video game that I was handing out name tags at the start of spring practice. Mike Gundy literally was. I mean, over 2/3 of their roster is new faces, guys that have never taken a snap for Oklahoma State. And most of those guys, Trey, even to make that more unbelievable, most of those guys arrived on campus June 1. They haven't even been in Stillwater for 2 months yet. And we're supposed to expect that they're going to all come together to form a cohesive football team. Like, that is truly the mountain that Mike Gundy is up against. But to his credit, in Big 12 Media Days, he said, you know what, like, as much as changed and as much as not gone our way, he said, I'm working more hours than ever right now, and I love it. It keeps him engaged. It keeps him active. Nothing is the same on a day-to-day basis. And so, I mean, honestly, hat tip to him at that point. He has done just about everything that a good to somewhat great coach will do in college football other than win a national championship, right? For him to be as deep into this as he is, this is his 22nd year? I think 22nd year.
I had 21st, but I was going off Bill's.
Maybe it's...
He might have misprinted.
Well, no, it's either 21 or 22.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
it's been
State
a long time.
Right in. Yeah, 2+ decades. For him to still be locked in, I think is really cool. And, it's an entirely new staff. He had to basically clean house to save his own job. And he said that as he was dismissing his staff, he did say, hey, this is not all on you. This is half on you. This is half on me, basically. Wish you the best and happy trails. So with so much new, there's not a lot of known commodities. Quarterback 1 is a battle between 2 guys who have never taken a single snap for Pistol Pete. Zane Flores is a third-year guy on campus, so he's accustomed to Stillwater, but he was redshirted and then he's been injured, had a foot injury all of last year, and so didn't get to play, even though like everybody and their mother got into the game at quarterback for the Pokes. And then Haas Haney. Dominated Texas high school football at Aledo High School, a local powerhouse up here in North Texas. He transfers from TCU, so he goes back to the black and orange, which I think is really cool. I would love to see Haney get his chance. He's a dual threat kid. I think he would bring a big time spark to that offense. Frankly, I just don't know enough about Zane Flores. I don't know that anybody does to tell you one way or another if they can believe in that passing attack. The rushing attack has to be markedly improved this year, and you mentioned Ollie Gordon, a Heisman contender and a favorite coming into the year last year. The offensive line was horrific last year. And part of that was because the passing game never took off, and so teams could just stack the box and say, okay, we're stopping Ollie Gordon, and if you're going to beat us, you got to throw it over the top. And Oklahoma State was not able to do that. But at one point, I think Oklahoma State was rushing for something like 1.5 yards a carry. I mean, it was abysmal. They finished the year 114th in the country in rushing, which we expected them to finish like 14th in the country. So quite a wide dispersion there of results. And then, I think defense is going to have to be committee by committee as well. It's a turnstile back there, and they're replacing all the key players at all the key positions. Todd Grantham comes in after, being just about everywhere in both college and the NFL scene. He's going to have to kind of earn his reputation back in college football again. There's a reason why he was, I think, an analyst at the NFL level. I can't remember if he was a coordinator or an analyst, but he's been hired and dismissed at a number of places. And so I'm sure part of the draw for getting Grantham was that Grantham then brought staff members with him. And so there was going to be continuity on that end, which when everything has changed, I guess a little bit of continuity is a good thing, and you'll take it where you can get it. But I just don't know. I don't know what to believe in. I don't know what to point at yet to say that, yeah, this is the reason why Oklahoma State is going to make a bowl game or not make a bowl game. It's a guessing game.
You mentioned the reputation that Todd Grantham has. Ever since a couple years ago when they lost the defensive coordinator that
Jim Knowles.
Yeah, Jim Knowles. Thank you. I had the wrong OSU in my head, and that threw me off. I was like, no, he wasn't at Oklahoma State. He was at Ohio State, but he was at both. When they lost Jim Knowles, ever since then, the defense has just been abysmal. And last year, it really felt like it bottomed out. 501 yards per game allowed, 215 allowed per game on the ground, 36 points per game allowed. There's new faces, and that's great, but they've kind of got a culture problem on that side of the ball, it feels like, because it's just been getting worse and worse every year. I do like Kyron Duhan, who comes up from UTEP, 7 sacks last year as a freshman, but they lost their top 5 linebackers. The secondary was decent, had its moments last year. They get Jalen Davies from UCLA, bring back Cam Smith and Parker Robertson, but like you said it best, man. It is just a total up in the air. I joked about this with North Carolina, that if anyone knows what's going to happen or tells you they know what's going to happen, they're not telling the truth to you. They really don't know what's going to happen this year. And I feel the same way about Oklahoma State. You pull up the schedule and, part of me wants to give Gundy the benefit of the doubt. It was a down year. He really hasn't had a year anywhere close to as bad as that one last year since his first year. I mentioned the 18-year bowl streak that he was on. The non-conference feels just absolutely brutal anytime you include a road game to Autzen Stadium. So we're starting 0-1 with that. Tulsa, I don't think is going to be much of a challenge, but that's an in-state rivalry that could get plucky and feisty if Oklahoma State's not paying attention. We've seen Oklahoma State struggle with lesser G5 opponents in the past, so can't overlook that one. You look at the conference schedule, they get Baylor at home. They go to Texas Tech, to Kansas State, and Iowa State at home to end the year. And then a whole lot of, hey, we're hoping to play a close game and come out on the right side of it, I feel like, in the other games.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to find an identity early. That defense is certainly going to have to step up. They're going to have to be able to stop the pass. They were 131st in the country. You could get whatever you wanted through the air. And, I led with my favorite storyline this year is the quarterback play. And so having, a secondary that is objectively a lot of new faces, but the last thing that we saw from them was you and I could have put up nice numbers through the air. So we'll see, man. I'm certainly rooting for Gundy. I feel like it was so weird watching Oklahoma State just be down and out and a non-factor. That was really like, I mean, that's why they got rid of the media poll in the Big 12, was because just about everybody they expected to contend either barely made a bowl game or straight up didn't. So rooting for Oklahoma State. I love when they're plucky and when they're, vying for a top 20 spot. And, Stillwater is normally just an impossible place to win when it's rocking. So I want to see them get back to that and be a real factor in the Big 12.
Me too, man. I love watching games when they got the paddles going. There's nothing like a big night game in Stillwater. It feels just like a big time environment in that conference. And it'd be great to get that back really soon. Let's transition over to one of the newer faces in the Big 12, the Cincinnati Bearcats, entering year 3 under Scott Satterfield. And it's worked out. He's been dealt a difficult hand, of course, moving to the Big 12. He had his high moments last year. They started 5-2, ended the year 0-5.
Yeah.
But Mitch, I kind of like Cincinnati this year. I'm really interested to see what they can put on the field. I think they've got one of the better under the radar quarterbacks in the conference in Brendan Sorsby. I like the defensive line on the other side of the ball. They've got 6 of the top defensive linemen from last year back. The receiving core is kind of all new, but I like the pieces they picked up.
Yep.
Jeff Caldwell, the guy looks really interesting. A big kid, 6'5", had over 1,000 yards at Lindenwood last year. So that's really interesting to me. I think Cincinnati could be a sleeper team, and I'm really trying to talk myself out of not being out on Cincinnati. I think I'm in on Cincinnati this year.
Well, and they had us in the first half, not going to lie meme last year. I mean, they were red hot. They would have made a bowl game had they not had that embarrassing collapse at home to Pitt. That was just like watching a car crash happen in front of your eyes. But yeah, very easily could have started 6-1, and then the offense just dried up. Suddenly they couldn't move the football. They were just getting outscored on a consistent level. So they beat Arizona State to go 5-2. That was the Jeff Sims game that we told you exactly what was going to happen there as soon as Leavitt had to miss that one. They then scored 23 against Colorado, 24 against West Virginia, 17 against Iowa State, 15 against Kansas State, and 13 against TCU. Objectively, a bunch of close losses, but the offense just could not find that last score to push them over the top. And so I do like Brendan Sorsby. I think he's a veteran arm in this league that gives them a real advantage. Evan Pryor is the running back there, former Ohio State guy, if I'm not mistaken. I do like the wide receiver core. You mentioned the kid from Lindenwood. They've got Caleb Goody, who comes over from Colorado State. Cyrus Allen comes over from Texas A&M. And then Joe Royer is back, all Big 12 selection at tight end last year. So I do like the defense. Very veteran group on the back end, returning a lot of starters. And you get incoming transfers in the secondary like Christian Harrison from Tennessee and Matthew McDoom from Coastal. I mean, yeah.
Great name. Fantastic name.
Certainly first or second ballot all-name team when it comes to college football, no doubt about that. The only thing that I worry about is just Satterfield finishing through the line. That's kind of been the conundrum throughout his coaching career is he can get some wins, but it always feels like he falls short of that ceiling. And so, the over-under, I believe, is 6.5. I could certainly see them getting to 7-8 wins. If that offense stays consistent, why not? I mean, in an era where there's just not a lot of returning production on a year in and year out basis, it feels like such an advantage when you do have a lot of the same guys coming back. So I'm with you there. I think Cincinnati could be a team that you absolutely do not want to see on your schedule and one that could pick you off if you have a down week.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot of the transfers there. Just want to throw one more. Tawee Walker at the running back position coming over from Wisconsin. I like that pickup a lot. I think this offense is going to be much improved this year. They were 1-4 in one-score games last year. Most of those losses came down the stretch when they were just trying to find that 6th win any way that they could. And the schedule isn't terrible this year. I think there's you mentioned 7 or 8 wins. There might even be a path, a very narrow one, but a path nonetheless to maybe even more than 7 or 8 wins, maybe as many as 9, I think. When you look at the schedule, they open against Nebraska at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. That's one weird neutral site game. Like there's not two that I'd have on my bingo cards that would be playing an opener in a neutral site game, but nonetheless they are. That's a really interesting game for both teams that I think is going to set the tone for a lot of things. Tough game against Bowling Green at home before closing out the non-conference portion with an FCS game. Then you get into the conference portion. Kansas is one of the biggest wild cards in the whole conference to me. We'll talk about them later, but I'm not sure what to expect. They do have to go on the road there. They host Iowa State and host Baylor in the month of October. But the road schedule really isn't awful when it comes to proven teams. So like Kansas is a big wild card. They go to Oklahoma State, who we talked about, that we don't know who they're going to be. They go to Utah to open November, and Utah is a team, another one that I think could be really, really good if the transfers hit, or closer to what we saw last year, vulnerable even at home. And they close the season at TCU, who's really good, but has shown some flaws as well. So the road schedule is not the worst that it could be, and I think they can pick a couple teams off at home like they showed against Arizona State last year.
Well, and if my homeschool math is doing me right, just 4 true road games this year, right? So a lot of the big opponents are at home, and they've got to weather those road trips to Utah and TCU in the final 4 weeks. But it feels like because of the schedule and the talent coming back, Cincinnati, if they get on a roll, look out. I think the Bearcats could absolutely be dangerous come November.
Yeah, they're just another team, man, that would not shock me in the slightest if they have a path to Arlington in the last couple of weeks of the season. Let's move on to another team that has a new old coach with West Virginia. They have Rich Rod coming back home. This will be his 8th total season in Morgantown. It's, of course, been a really long time since he's been in West Virginia. He's been all over the place, most recently at Jacksonville State. He's a guy that has led some surprising turnarounds and some surprising seasons. He got Jacksonville State up and running very quickly. We thought they were going to be at the bottom of CUSA in their first year in the FBS transition, but he had them competing for a title in that conference and in a bowl game in year 1. This is a match that ended really unfortunately the first time that Rich Rod left Morgantown almost 20 years ago at this point. But when they had it running, it was running. And he had them right on the cusp of even a national championship in 2007. So we've seen the ceiling that he can do here. I really like Nico Marchial in this offense. I think he can be a really good dual threat. And I love that Rich Rod, honestly, he can be ahead of the pack of some of these teams in the Big 12 just because he's committing to what he's doing. We talked about that when he was in CUSA at Jacksonville State. Committing to that bit with his offense is going to put him way ahead because they're going to have an identity from day one.
Yeah, and I think that identity early is going to be Jaheim White. I wrote in the preview, he's not an unheralded name. Like if you're a college football fan that pays attention, you know who Jaheim White is. He had over 800 yards and 7 touchdowns last year, but Rich Rod loves to run the football. And White's not the bruising running back that he likes to use, right? There's probably going to be some sort of thunder and lightning element, but boy, White is an athlete, and he is fun to watch when he gets space. So I think he's going to get a lot of the workload early, assuming Marchial wins that battle, which I think he certainly has the inside track. He's the only one with experience at West Virginia. They bring in Jalen Henderson from Texas A&M. They bring in Max Brown from Charlotte. So the room has guys, but Marchial is the quarterback that's been there, that's been a Mountaineer for a couple seasons now, and at times has flashed. I think something like 5 touchdowns and a couple picks. I want to say maybe those numbers aren't right. I don't have that note in front of me, but kind of another transfer portal special. Oklahoma State brought in 60 plus guys. West Virginia brings in 50 plus. Right? They lose C.J. Donaldson, notably to Ohio State. They lost a bunch of other guys. Hudson Clement is in the Midwest now. So. Another team that I think you have to kind of look at the coaching staff and you have to look for the identity. And defensively, the Mountaineers need to get back to having one of the top defenses in the country. They were 109th in scoring defense last year. They were 110th in total defense. And for whatever reason, that just felt like something that Neil Brown could never quite nail down. That defense was hot and cold. They had years that it was very good and the pass rush was a nightmare. You had years when the secondary couldn't stop a nosebleed. And so last year was another one of those struggle bus years. They bring in Zach Alley, though, to take over the defensive coordinator spot from Oklahoma, which at the time felt like a prank, right? A bit of Twitter fake news, because Alley, working at Oklahoma, conceivably has an inside path to competing for a playoff spot and competing for, a national championship if Oklahoma could get back on track. But to me, I wrote that Alley coming over really tells me all I need to know about the vision that Rich Rod has, the identity that he wants to get back to, and the commitment to getting West Virginia back to a constant contender, not only for the Big 12 championship game, but then, of course, by extension, for a playoff berth as well. So I think that's what I'm most excited to see from the Mountaineers is let's get back to some physicality. Let's make home field advantage mean something again there in Morgantown. And we'll see about the offense. I think it's going to be a lot of Jaheim White early. After that, you're going to have to kind of show me who's going to step up with so many new faces. But they're a wait and see team for me. I'm not going to project them to do anything special this year, but I do think over the next 2-3 seasons, that's a team that I like rising up the conference standings.
I do love a lot of the transfers they brought in on the defensive side of the ball, though. You look at Jamori Robertson, the American Defensive Player of the Year last year at UTSA with 10.5 sacks. Chase Wilson was a really solid linebacker at Colorado State. He brought Fred Perry with him from Jacksonville State, who was just a playmaker all over the field for the Gamecocks. So, yeah, they're going to be rebuilding. They're going to be trying to find that identity, especially early on. But, again, this is another program, just like I said with Houston, that I think I'm buying stock in right now while it's low, because Rich Rod just has an identity, and he's proven that he can get back to that. I know he had some rough stops at Michigan and Arizona. It wasn't always great at those two places. But for this year specifically, it's a tricky schedule, man. You look at the non-conference portion, they go to Ohio, who I know is going to be rebuilding after Tim Albin left and went to Charlotte. They host Pitt in the backyard brawl. I think Pitt is going to surprise a lot of people this year. I know they had a hot start last year and kind of faded down the stretch, but I think Pitt is going to be a really tough out even in Morgantown. And then the conference portion, you go to Arizona State and host Texas Tech for your last two games of the season.
Brutal
close. Absolutely brutal close. In addition to that, you go to Kansas, you go to BYU. I know BYU has a lot of stuff up in the air right now, but that's always a tough place to play. To the bounce house, go to Houston. So, man, a lot of these games where I'm thinking I would pick them because they're playing a team similarly in the same tier as them, they're playing them on the road. And I just really hate that when I'm looking at a team trying to find their footing in year one of a new coach.
Yeah, there's not many breaks up and down this schedule. It's hard to look at the totality of it and say, okay, this is where they get some momentum going. So I do think for that reason, the total is more than a sum of its parts. And I think Mountaineer fans should have a lot of reason to be excited. I think recruiting is obviously going to be a huge part of it. You brought in so many new faces through the transfer portal. What high school products can you get excited about your brand of football? And then, most coaches take a big year two jump. And I think West Virginia is squarely on my hot list for a jump in 2026.
Well, let's close this episode out with one more team before we hold off until Wednesday and Friday for the rest of the Big 12. And that's going to be the Kansas Jayhawks. The Jimmys and Joes voted them number 11. It was a really interesting season for Kansas last year. They're ranked in the preseason AP poll, coming off back-to-back bowl appearances. They win week one. They get all the way up to number 19 in the AP poll, and then just absolute disaster strikes. They start 1-5, lost 5 straight after getting up to number 19 in the AP poll. But then at the end of the season, out of nowhere, they turn it around, go 4-2, and beat 3 top 20 teams. They ruined some playoff hopes in the process, and were actually playing for a bowl game the last week of the season. So we got to see who we thought they were those last 6 weeks of the season. They were a tough out. They were playing consistent offense. And, it's hard to say that this is going to be it's always hard to say when it's going to come down to one player, but Jalen Daniels feels like which version of him do we get? Is it pre-injuries from a couple years ago, or is it the guy that really struggled to find his footing going from Andy Kotelnicki to Jeff Grimes last year and really felt like he was forcing the ball a lot of times? I think whichever version of Jalen Daniels we get is going to determine how Kansas goes. And because of that, this is the biggest wild card team in the entire Big 12 for me.
I think I'm there with you. They could win 8-9 games, I think, relatively easily if they're clicking. They could also not make a bowl game like they failed to do last year because of Jalen Daniels and I think the running game on top of that, right? With Daniels, there were moments where it was like, okay, there's the Heisman caliber player that we've learned to know and love over these last couple of years. And then there would be times where he literally would throw it into like a pack of 3 defenders with no receiver in the area. I mean, that was just objectively the Jekyll and Hyde dance that he did last year. Career high 12 interceptions in 2024, and it sunk the Jayhawks season early on. Down the back half, you saw the heights of what Kansas could do. Now, they are going to have to go back to the drawing board a little bit when it comes to the rushing game. Devin Neal, Kansas's all-time leading rusher, gone to the NFL. They bring in LaShawn Williams from Iowa, who I think is a talented player, hadn't necessarily shown much in the black and gold, but he's probably the starter this year, and Daniel Highshaw Jr. is back as the backup running back as well. So, a nice 1-2 punch, I think, for the Jayhawks. They finished 13th in the country last year in rushing, and I think they're going to need to be a top 20 offense in order to hit that ceiling once again. We talked about Jalen Daniels and which version suits up for him. The defense is the other storyline. I need to see them take another step forward. They have 3 returning starters and a host of depth behind them along the line. And then I like the linebackers. They bring in Bengali Kamara from South Carolina, Joseph Sipp Jr. from Bowling Green, and then Trey Lathan from West Virginia. So it's 3 new faces, but it's 3 very talented faces and names that you might have heard from their previous stops as well. Secondary was an absolute liability. 103rd in the country in pass defense. That absolutely has to improve. But yeah, man, I mean, this is a team that has, I think, a lot of talent. And, for some people, the shine may have worn off on Lance Leipold. I'm not necessarily one of those people. I think that Kansas could absolutely find their place at 8-9 wins in a good season. If your expectation is Leipold leading Kansas to a Big 12 title, I don't know that you're ever going to be satisfied, certainly not on a consistent basis, but to find the slot where Kansas fits in the Big 12, very similar, I think, to how Iowa State has slotted in over these last few years, right? Very consistent, 7, 8, 9 wins, and then, lo and behold, last year they win double digits for the first time ever, and they go back to the Big 12 championship game. That's the kind of program that I think that Leipold can and is building in Lawrence.
I'm right there with you, and I'm higher on Kansas this year, taking a step forward, maybe getting to see what we thought we would see last year when they were ranked in the preseason, had a lot of hype coming in. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about is switching back to maybe a scheme that Jalen Daniels is more familiar with and more comfortable with, because like I said off the top of this preview, it was just really clear from the word go that the Jeff Grimes scheme, for whatever reason, was not clicking. He was seeing ghosts. He was throwing it into triple coverage, like you mentioned. They're going to Jim Zabrowski as the offensive coordinator. He's been Jalen Daniels' quarterback coach since the beginning of his time at Kansas. So this is going to be someone that he's more familiar with, calling plays, hopefully that's more tailored to his skill set rather than trying to force some things that maybe he wasn't good at. So I'm excited about that. They got some interesting pieces at wide receiver to help him out, even though they lost a bunch. But yeah, you mentioned the secondary. That they were that bad, and they're losing their 2 best players. So yeah. I'm really worried about that. Losing Melo and Kobe, man, like that's some all-stars right there. But I'm interested to see if they can get that turned around and just find some athletes. We've never accused Kansas of being a defensive juggernaut, but I think a big part of that could be getting a little bit more pressure on the passer. And I do like the defensive line. They have some nice pieces there. Dean Miller anchoring that defensive line could be just improved this year. And if they can get a little bit more pressure on the passer, I think that they'll be in better shape from that pass defense. Going over to the schedule, 7.5 over under. So Vegas is higher on the Jayhawks than most of these other teams. We're gonna get to see them in week 0 against Fresno State as they open up the remodeled Memorial Stadium there in Lawrence. So
that's the other thing. Off our road trip.
That's right. Yeah, we're kicking off our college football road trip. Go back and listen to that episode from June if you need to get hyped about some specific games. But we might have buried the lead there. It was also a weird situation from just a logistics standpoint last year, right? Like they're playing their home games in Kansas City. They're not even playing all their home games at the same stadium in Kansas City. Some are at the NFL stadium, some are at the MLS stadium. You're thinking about you're practicing in one town and playing home games in another that's an hour or two away. That's weird too. Like that's some weird juju that might introduce on a football season. I don't know. So just another thing that's going to be back to normal this year for Kansas, playing their home games back in Lawrence. They go to Missouri in the renewal of the border war. I'm really, really excited about that game. It's the first time that those two programs have faced off since 2011. And it's a hated rivalry that can get really heated at times. So I'm really excited about that one. You look at the conference schedule, it opens up really nicely. I think there's a really good chance that they start 3-0 in conference play. They get West Virginia at home, Cincinnati, who I am high on, but they do get them in Lawrence. And then they go to UCF that's rebuilding down there under Scott Frost. Then they go to Lubbock. That's going to be a tough one to win, of course. Off a bye, it's Kansas State at home, a game that they haven't won in quite some time. But if they can rebound from those two games, there's an opportunity to close really strong with Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Iowa State on the road, and then Utah at home to close it out. So I like how the schedule sets up. I think there's some real opportunities for a runway to build some momentum. And, yeah, we could see an 8 or 9 win Kansas. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility this year.
Yeah, I lean toward Kansas hitting the over here. I wrote that I still believe in Leipold in this offense. And so, yeah, I think Cincinnati honestly might be the biggest swing game because if they do get that momentum rolling early, Cincinnati we like is a decent team. So if they could start 4-1, 5-0, if they could find a way to beat Missouri, I mean, that's going to be a tough ask on the road, but it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. Suddenly, I think that starts to get really fun, and maybe it starts to feel like 2007, 2008 for Jayhawk fans all over again.
Well, these are some really interesting teams down here at the bottom of the Big 12, and like I've said several times now, don't be surprised if one of them is right in the thick of the championship contention going into November. I think that this is just a conference full of parity, and if you sit here and say that you know who's going to finish last, you're going to be wrong, just like people were last year.
I totally agree. It's a fool's errand trying to pick the order of the Big 12, but gosh darn it, we've set out to do it. We've obviously disagreed at some points. We've agreed at others with the Jimmies and the Joes. So excited to see who ultimately ends up being right. Let's do this. Let's break right there. Let's call this Monday's episode. And when we come back on Wednesday, we'll talk kind of the middle tier, those dark horses in the Big 12. Some of the favorite storylines, I think, in the entire conference are to be found right there in the meaty middle. We're going to talk Colorado. I know that's certainly an intriguing team for a lot of people. We're going to talk TCU, what's their ceiling in 2025, and a couple other really fun teams as well. So for Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until Wednesday, so long, everybody.